Hello and welcome back to Book Talk. And today is so much fun because I have my friends Lynette Eason, Lynn Blackburn, and Natalie Walters. And that's not in any particular order. It's just the way I see them on my screen. Back. And those of you who have watched the first time they were together know you are in for a treat. And those of you who weren't here the first time, you need to go back and watch that one because it was so much fun. These ladies write my favorite romantic suspense. The moment I see their books, it's an automatic pre-order, and it's also an automatic download for NetGalley. And even though I get the ARC ahead of time, I still pre-order the book, and then I usually end up with 2 or 3 copies because I forgot that I pre-ordered it. I end up with like multiples, which is great because then I can give them away, and I love it. It's like Christmas every day at my mailbox. So. These ladies write amazing romantic suspense. Natalie's latest series was set with the Secret Service. Lynette's has been set with FBI and protective services of different kinds. Lynn's has been set with deep divers and marshals and Secret Service and all kinds of different things. And so we've got just a lot of really fun things. So I thought we'd start with your next books. So Natalie, I'll start with you because your next book just has some of the best characters ever.
Oh, thank you.
So
well, thank you.
Like the 60-second synopsis of your story.
Okay, 60 seconds. So this, the next book that I have releasing is coming out in April, Blind Trust, and it is the final book in the Snap Agency series. It brings readers Lila Fox and Nicholas Garcia's story, which everybody's so excited about because they are quite the pair, stubborn, and they were hard to write. And so Lila, who has never really done things by the books, has is being threatened by somebody she put into prison previously. And so she is not somebody to be thwarted. And so she's not going to hide or shy away from the challenge. She's actually going to like take the offensive and go after the people who are trying to come after her. And Nicholas Garcia, who is prior explosives officer in the military, is thinking bombs are much safer than handling Lila. And so, but he's not willing to let her hurt herself. So he's committed to seeing it through and deciding whether he has the heart to stay within the agency and lose it to Lila, or if he needs to make a decision to leave. So it's an explosive conclusion to the agency series, and I'm super excited for it.
And it's such a fun one because he is all about safety. And she's all about you just rush into danger. It's right. And so when you say it's explosive, it was so much fun. And I was like, even though you know how it's going to end, I was like, I don't know how this is going to work out. And so then you've then got like these Marshall Secret Service kind of thing going on, and you got to tell us because it's again you're kind of like towards the end of a series. All these characters we love.
It is. I think somebody commented on Instagram or something how much they love third book couples. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was a really interesting way to put it because my series tend to have 3 books. So they are that final couple in the series. And depending on how you write, but the way I write, we know them. We've met them in the first couple of books. And so we've had time, even though you can absolutely read it as a standalone, if you've read the other books in the series, you've already gotten to know them a little bit, and you've already, in a lot of cases, gotten invested in their relationship and in what's going on with them. But like Natalie said, it's so hard to write these third book couples because there's so much pressure from the not negative pressure. I don't mean it that way, but you so desperately want to get it right for the readers. You want them to get that payoff and that satisfaction of seeing this relationship happen and all of that kind of stuff. So in my case, I have 2 Secret Service agents who in the previous 2 books have worked together in the Raleigh, North Carolina office. And since the second book ended, Zane has transferred to the President's Protective Detail in DC. And we learn a lot. I know we learn a lot about their backstory and their history because in the earlier books, it was clear that they had sort of this weird friendship, or is it more, or is it less, or do they like each other, or do they hate each other? And the other people in the team are convinced that they need to be together, but they have their reasons for not. And so it opens, it actually opens in the first scene takes place before the series begins. It actually, well, no, it doesn't. That's not right. It takes place in between the two books. That's right. It takes place in between the first two books. And then it jumps ahead. So I'm like Natalie, it was they were hard to write in just in that sense of wanting desperately to get them right. And because people have enjoyed my other couples. And so then it feels like there's a lot of pressure to get them right. But the president is coming back to visit Raleigh, to visit a friend in Raleigh. And so Zane is coming back as part of the protective detail, and he'll be liaising with Tessa, and sparks will fly, and hopefully it'll all work out in the end.
And she's got the pressure of she's in charge.
Say that again?
And she's got the pressure of being in charge.
Oh yes, absolutely. She's in charge of the president's detail. I learned so much while I was researching it. The president's detail that he has with him in Washington and that are coming with him are ultimately responsible for him. But they're they will pull in every law enforcement agency in the area, federal, local, state, everybody who's anywhere nearby could end up standing post, doing everything from a door to a metal detector or whatever, and Tessa's supposed to manage all that, and so it's a big deal for her. Not to mention the fact that Zane's coming back to town, so they need to keep their head on straight, but there's just so many distractions.
It was fun because as I was reading it, one of my best friends from law school, her husband was on the presidential detail for several years, and so I just kept imagining him as Zane, and I was like, I could see it all. So then there's that, and you've got your critical threats team, and again, it was the third or fourth book, and I was like, y'all just are killing it with these books that are at the end of the series. And normally people are like, okay, a series starts here and then it goes down, and y'all are starting here and going like this. So you got and the action just ramps right off. So tell us more.
Okay, so Critical Threat is actually the fourth book in the series. I do 4-book series, just that from the Elite Guardians and on. Mine are 4 books for various reasons that the publisher had, which and I'm fine with it. It's fine. So I get to spend quite a bit of time with these characters, and so by the time I reach the 4th book, it's like, okay, I have one more book in me. I can do this. I really like 3-book series, but 4 books are fine. So Raina Price is a physician assistant. Or no, wait, what is she? I can't remember. I'm on the other book. I'm writing the next book. I get my characters mixed up. Okay, so Raina Price. So she's on the helicopter. I don't know where she is. She's in some medical facility. Anyway.
We have all been there. We all know that feeling.
I should have reread this book. This is not Raina. This is Critical Threat. That's Countdown is Raina. Critical Threat. Okay, can you edit this? Okay, so who's Critical Threat? Critical Threat is Grace and Sam. Okay. Oh yeah, because I really like this story. So this deal with the serial killer. So Sam's dad is a serial killer, and he is in prison. And Grace and Sam are both kind of in the same profession. They're both psychiatrists, and Grace, and they both work with the FBI in that Grace is in the behavioral analysis department, and it's like profiling. They don't call them profilers anymore. They're called behavioral analysts. So anyway, and then Sam works, he's like contract with the FBI, and then but he works within a prison, and I created this prison. This prison actually does not exist. So my FBI buddy was like, why don't we, there's not really a prison that would house him in the area that you're wanting to set this, and I was like, well, can I just create my own prison? She said sure, and so that's what we did. So anyway, and so Sam and Grace have known each other before, and they Sam kind of ghosted her at a conference, and so she wasn't real thrilled with them because she kind of likes them. But anyway, so they had a little bit of history there, and it was really fun to bring them back together. And of course, the readers don't really see that history. I didn't write that. I actually thought it might be fun to write that scene and then see where it goes from there. But I haven't done that yet. I have other stuff to write. So like a book, the one that I can tell you about at the beginning. So yeah, so that's it. They get together in the end, of course, but getting there is was quite the adventure.
That's what's kind of the fun thread through all of these books. They're the last book in the series. They're characters that we've seen, except for Lynette's. We didn't see Sam before. Sam's kind of brand new, but we've seen Grace.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely with Natalie and Lynn's. We knew these characters were coming. We knew they had to come together. And so it's the payoff for the reader. And then, oh my gosh, what a payoff. So what was the hardest part? And like Sam being the son of a serial killer, oh my word, that's got to be challenging to write. So what was the hardest part or the most challenging part for each of these books? And Lynn, I'll start with you.
Okay, well, mine's actually, I know. I don't have an outline when I write. I have a general idea, but I don't have an outline. And I wrote myself into a corner and I could not get out of it. Lynette could not get me out of it. And usually she can. Usually I can say, I've written myself in a corner and we can brainstorm it, and she couldn't get me out. And I actually ended up having to reach out to my Secret Service contact and say, this is what I've done. How do I fix this? Because one of the things, and everybody writes from a different perspective, but I am not interested in, it's not that I think that every person in law enforcement or the Secret Service or the military is perfect. And certainly there are bad individuals in any profession. But when I'm writing them, I'm not interested in bashing anyone that I'm writing about, whether it's the military, the Secret Service, or the sheriff, or whatever. And in this case, I really wanted to make sure that my Secret Service characters came across as competent at what they do. And the problem is that in the third book, there is a threat against the president. And so I have this situation where I'm nearing the end of the book. I've got a threat against the president, but now I'm torn because I need action. I need a big scene at the end, but I need my Secret Service agents to solve the problem and not mess up. Like the Secret Service, it's 100% every day, friends. We don't mess up. We can't have a bad day. And so I've been trying to, I couldn't, everything I thought of, I was like, no, that makes them look incompetent. No, that makes them look like they didn't do their job. Tessa needs to do a good job. I actually had to say, it was like an hour phone call, trying to sort out a few things. Then that's how we wound up with the ending we wound up with, because he basically gave me a suggestion. I said, that will work. I will make that happen, because that's the only thing I can think of that will fill that reader need. You want a good payoff at the end too. Like there needs to be something big that happens. And just that they solve the case is a little boring for the reader. I think the Secret Service would prefer it to be that way forever. Like they fix it and it's never a shootout or there's never an issue. But for a book, I needed some action, and I had created a situation where I couldn't create any. So it's always helpful to have people who can give you some advice on that when you get yourself into a mess. But I struggled over that ending. I had actually written the very end and had this gap of something big happens here. And I had no idea what it was.
Thank God.
So yeah, that was the hardest part.
All right, Natalie, what was yours?
So mine wasn't so much scenes. Mine were just my characters, kind of like what Lynn had touched on. Just our readers have followed these characters from the very beginnings, and now, and especially when you have, and I don't know, like for Lila and Garcia, they've kind of had a romantic tension from the very onset. You could kind of see that one was kind of crushing on the other one, and the other one was kind of just oblivious to it, or maybe they both were, but they weren't going to admit it to themselves or anybody else. And so I'm building that up, and then I get to their story, and neither one of them wants to cooperate with me. Like neither one of them wants to, like, okay, when would it naturally be the right time for either of them to express their feelings? And so I'm a big proponent of natural relationships in the, happening and very naturally, and not just being forced, like, oh, I'm gonna love you. And so my first round of writing, or I would say the first several rounds of writing, when I would send it to my early readers, like the people who critique me will, with love and compassion and kindness and chocolate, tell me these are not working. I got a lot of nopes, like, nope, it's too soon. Nope, it's too soon. Like, that's not what Garcia would do. That's not what Lila would do. And so I really had to find that balance on, like, what was reasonable in Garcia expressing his feelings and Lila expressing his feelings and receiving those feelings. But because they were both very strong-willed and stubborn characters, neither one of them was really giving me like an inch. Like I was kind of floundering. I was like, okay, maybe now they would like be affectionate. Nope, not now. So it ended up working out well. I like it. And so far from what like my, like, because right now ARCs or, NetGalley's gone out. And so there's some people who are like, which is terrifying, because you're just like, did I do it justice? It's the last book. And so, but I've had some positive feedback that have said that they've liked the way that the relationship moved in the story. Because it's been 2 stories, you think like, oh, now it has to be fast because we've already spent all this time with them. You need to jump into the relationship. And that just was not, that was not Garcia and Lila. They were like, nah, no, we're going to make you work for it.
Yeah, and it wasn't. And it struck me as working the way it was in the book, in the version I read. It worked, but I could see people like, no, they're both very stubborn, and it was the epitome of a friends to lovers, and there's a huge risk. There is a huge risk in that type of. I mean, that's my husband and my story, and I will never forget standing on that cliff and going, do I risk our friendship?
Right.
Because there's no going back. I mean, very few people go back if it doesn't work as a friends to lovers. Yeah. And so I was like, is it worth the risk? I'm glad I risked it, because we're next end of this week is 27 years, I think. Yeah. It was very dangerous, very dangerous. And so it felt very real to me, having walked through that, to be like, yeah, no, there's going to be a lot of hesitation and tension in that. Yeah. So Lynette, what was the hardest part for you, other than figuring out who the hero was, period?
Oh, yes. I think the hardest part for me was trying to write Sam legitimately. Like how finding out your father is a serial killer. I mean, like, what does that do to your mental psyche? It's just like, I mean, it's not like, oh, okay, so he's a killer, and yeah, let's go on with life. No, I mean, it messed him up completely. Of course, I mean, he made a complete career change because of it, and he basically lost his marriage and his family over this. And I mean, there's redemption in the end and all this, obviously, but I just trying to figure out how to write his personality, his mental, how he is mentally, how he fought through that and recovered. I don't know, did you actually ever recover from that? But how do you come to the acceptance and realize that, okay, this is in my past, but that does not define the future or the plans that God has made for me, and then I can live an abundant and Christ-filled life regardless. And of course, it's a struggling with the forgiveness, because he finds out a lot of stuff that he didn't know before about his father, and that just kind of added to the burden. So writing him so that readers found him believable was a struggle. I kept having to go back and revisit that, and I'd be laying in bed thinking about it, and I'd get this idea, and I'm like, oh, I have to get up and write this down, because if I don't, I'll forget it in the morning. And so yeah, that was my struggle with that story.
And he reminded me of, and I'm going to forget the character's name, but in Lisa Gardner's first book, The Perfect Husband, you know, she finds out that her husband was a serial killer, and it's her journey through all that. And so it reminded me of that, only with redemption and hope at the end, because we write the Christian fiction. And so just that thinking about, okay, if I was writing a character like that, because you have to keep going. And I thought what was fascinating about what you did with Sam is having his mother-in-law live with him, choosing to stay with him and help care for the kids, and choosing his side versus his wife's side. I thought was really an interesting side of redemption, like being visibly shown, because it would have been really easy to be like, oh my God, you're a freak because your dad did all these things. And so it was like I don't know if it was intentional, but as I was watching the character, and it wasn't, it jumped off the page to me.
Pretty much.
You know, because that was
pretty much. I wanted to show, I'm sorry. I wanted to show, like, the last person you would think would be the person who sided with him would be his mother-in-law, you know, his ex-mother-in-law, I guess. But I don't know. I love that the relationship, and it just kind of unfolded that way. And I was like, oh, I guess this is where we're going with this. Okay.
But it was perfect. I mean, it was like this great visual showing of what love and redemption and all of that, you know, that you're not your parents. You're not defined by those around you and by the relationships you can't control and things like that. So I thought it was beautiful. So y'all have written in these books and in all your books, but let's just focus on these books because, you know, they're the most recent and the most wonderful, because your most recent book is always your most wonderful book because it's most recent. What are the key characteristics of a hero you can root for? So Lynn, we'll start with you.
Oh gosh.
I guess I started
Well, I think it is, I mean, for me, with a hero, I want my heroes to be men. And all that entails. Like, I don't want, they can have all kinds of different interests. They don't have to be men in the sense of like always hunting or always playing sports or something like that. But I want them to have that, I mean, I don't know any other way to put it, that Christian role of a man, the way God designed men to be. And I am personally delighted that I am a woman, and I am delighted that my husband is a man. Like, God made us different, and I am great with that. And I want the heroes to have that protective drive. They don't have to be macho men, if that makes sense. Maybe I'm not making sense, but I just want them to have that that sense of responsibility and protective of the people around them, not necessarily just the heroine. You know, their relationships are important to them. Everybody has different, you know, skills. I love playing with different hobbies and likes and dislikes. I had a lot of fun with a previous hero where he had been a baseball player, and then when he lost that, he ends up being the best cook in the group, you know, and he has all these great skills. But I really love that aspect of it. And then at the same time, I really think with heroes, we need to see that they're not perfect, because nobody likes a perfect, whether it's any character, nobody likes perfect character, but that they are not satisfied, if that makes sense. Like, they know they have things they need to work on, and they are working on them. Not that they've attained perfection, but that they are pursuing excellence, and whatever that looks like, whether that's in their career or their relationships or whatever. So for me, I am a very character driven. I can forgive a lot of flaws if I care about the characters. If I don't care about the characters, then it's really hard for me to stay engaged in a book. So yeah, that's probably it for me.
Natalie?
I mean, I don't know how I can answer after that. She pretty much just like summed it all up. I love, I mean, she kind of nails it. I definitely like, I like my heroes to be relational and have the issues that they're, you know, that there's kind of, I think there's this misconception that men have to be perfect and be strong. And I like seeing tender sides too, even if it's something like humor or just vulnerability, but I don't think that they need to be vulnerably weak. I think they just need to be vulnerable. And I like being able to see that there's a compatibility in the relationship, that they can build each other up. I think that that's really important. And then I love my heroes to have humor. I think humor is so fun and romantic, and I don't know, I like laughing. And so if I can, especially when you're going through the hard stuff, if you can laugh together, and just that's sometimes how you're not laughing, you're crying. So if they can just laugh together, that's really great. But I also I think I like my heroes to be approachable. I want any female reader to read my books and be like, oh, that's a hero that I would go and talk to. Like, that's somebody, you know what I mean? Because I feel like sometimes you look at the heroes they put in front of movies, and you're like, okay, well, I will never be able to approach a Chris Hemsworth, not ever. Like, there's no way that I could say, but maybe a Chris Pratt, like maybe a Star-Lord might be in my future. You know what I mean? Just throwing that one out. But if I look at the two, compare the two of them, I see two very different heroes. And so I think I think that's, yeah, I'm going to leave it at that Natalie is a Chris Pratt and not a Chris Hemsworth. While my husband is sitting right across from me. Right.
We'll get his take on it later. All right, and Lynette, I'll give you the last word on this one.
I mean, what do I add? The only thing I could really think of that I would add to, I like my heroes to be the pursuer. I mean, it's okay for my heroines to let them know they want to be pursued, but I like Lynn described, I like my men to be men. And I think men should pursue the women. And but it's okay to be flirty and yeah, it's okay if you want to pursue me. I'm good with that, yeah. So anyway, but everything they said and my little
bit of
yeah.
Awesome. So that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. It's always a blast. And if y'all have not read these ladies yet, you absolutely have to. They literally jump to the top of my to be read pile the moment they hit my Kindle or my mailbox, or both. And definitely reread them and study them, because they are the top notch when it comes to romantic suspense. And so highly, highly recommend their books. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. This was so fun.